And you're very welcome along. It is time to talk rugby. Brian O'Driscoll's here. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good.
Are you having as good a time at the moment as the Irish rugby team seem to be having?
I don't think anyone could possibly have as good a time as them. Yeah, I'm all of a sudden pretty regretful that I retired.
Yeah.
It seemed to be like tours that I don't remember, jet skiing and golf, non-stop golf, and visiting koala sanctuaries and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, listen, it's good that they're able to have fun. That's such an important part after a long season too. It's such an important part of touring that you actually enjoy it, rather than go down and just train and see hotel rooms and nice training pitches.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to see the country a small bit.
And video sessions.
And to be able to actually do some things. There were coaches in the past that it was not encouraged to golf, or maybe 9 holes, had to have buggies. And yeah, your rest day was meant to be that, resting up. Whereas some guys can't do that. Cian Healy, cannot sit still. He wouldn't even be capable of going to the cinema to sit for an hour and a half. So his day off is action-packed, but so's his life. So you have to allow players do what makes them happy. And I think it's great that they're down there and enjoying it and enjoying one another's company, because that come match time it'll be business.
And also because this is a short tour compared to the 7 weeks that they're going to be, 9 weeks really, when you consider the training stuff beforehand, that they're going to be living in each other's pockets. So they have to like each other and not end up killing each other when they go to Japan. Yeah, and it's full on. They're when they're training and when they're in meetings, and the meetings can be quite long under Joe, and all that video analysis. There's a lot expected of you, so it is important to be able to differentiate between the two of switching off and having your downtime, and then being clued in when it's time to work, because you're not allowed slack. You won't be cut any slack if you're not up to the standard he's expecting of you. So you have to get yourself right. That's ultimately, it's left up to you.
And captain, on a lot of those tours, as captain, would you have not been in that kind of position where you could approach Declan or Eddie or whoever it was at the time and say, look, the lads are climbing the walls here, we have to be given a little more freedom on our days off?
Yeah, I think the more experience you get, you realise how much leeway you can get push with a coach, and how certain coaches listen to you more than others. But yeah, I think they come under their own pressure as well, and sometimes they clamber up or they tighten up because they haven't had a good running sequence, or you've been on the back of a number of losses. So
does the Grand Slam mean you can play golf? Is there a little bit of that?
I think there's a bit of that, definitely. It's like,
because jet skis, you're like, they're kind of dangerous.
Yeah.
That's the entire team out there, basically.
Yeah, and I've never seen that before, which is great. You know what? Like you literally could get injured, well, Robbie Keane style, flicking the remote with your foot. Yes, it's more likely that you're going to get injured on a jet ski. But listen, there's a lot of young lads in there too. Let them have fun, and do you know what? That'll show, because when you're away on tour, if you're not having a good time, it's reflected in your performance.
Just one last question about this, because Bill Belichick has this thing where everybody's terrified to meet him in the corridor, because he'll ask them, like, there's a quiz that goes on, it's a pop quiz, like, about a specific play, and if you get it wrong, you're basically screwed. Is Joe Schmidt a bit like that, and kind of sidling up to you at dinner time, just going, about that play, how does that work again?
Yeah, like Joe will talk rugby 24/7. The lads don't want to do that, so and I'd say some of the coaching ticket don't want to do that either. It's at dinner time. It's I wouldn't say the lads are actively avoiding Joe, but I don't think if Joe's sitting at a table on his own,
they're all
lads are going over, going, so let's talk through, our strategy for this weekend. Yeah, you got to be able to have switch off from it, and yeah, I suppose there's the school teacher there. There's a little bit of nervousness with a lot of players, and I think he enjoys that control that he knows he has.
Yeah.
But as a result, maybe that social setting of just chatting, two guys chatting, isn't quite as organic as it might be with past players and him, or other coaches and their players. Michael Cheika for me was always a super easy guy to chat to, and still remains a good friend, because I think I love it. I love going out to dinner with him. When he comes over, I'll actively make sure that I try and meet him for dinner because I know I'll have a good time. And I wouldn't say that about a million coaches.
Yeah, okay. That's why this team is really interesting, because it seems like it's a team where he's kind of letting go a bit of that control, where it's like, I'm not picking my first choice 10, I'm not picking my first choice front row, and I'm giving the opportunity for those guys to have experience in a proper competitive setup. Like, I mean, I think we probably all accept that the Cian Healy battle for the number one job with Jack McGrath is like, give or take. No, it's like Healy's a little bit ahead, but the two and
Healy's
three
ahead. No, Healy's ahead now. I don't think he's a little bit ahead. I think
it's his spot.
Yeah, I think it is. I think on the basis of this year's performances, Jack McGrath has been okay. He's been decent when he's come in, but I think Cian Healy is firmly the number one there.
The 2 and 3 is definitely a big gap, right? Between, like, obviously John Ryan and Tadhg Furlong, the gap is probably a bit bigger even than the gap between McGrath and Healy. So why has Joe Schmidt decided to go, I'm going to put these three out and I'm going to put Joey Carbery out and I'm going to see how they float in this game? Because, you've got to win your first test.
Yeah, you do. You do. Obviously, Australia haven't played together since November, so they'll be pretty rusty as well. There's a couple of new caps in there, but I think they sense that they're beginning to grow and there's a little bit of confidence with them. But we did play together as a collective back in March on Paddy's Day. That's not that long ago. Yeah. So you'd have to feel that this first test, from a confidence perspective, off the back of a Grand Slam as well, our team should be brimming with confidence. That said, those changes are interesting. I think Rob Herring is a selection based on, obviously, Rory Best pulled out of the tour, and you've got who's your third hooker when you go to Japan? Is it Niall Scannell or is it Rob Herring? And
is James Tracy in that
discussion at all? And James Tracy is in the mix. Really good little cameo when he came on in the Pro 14 final. Won a really important penalty that was a big turning point in that game. Or I should say that was the semi-final rather than the final, the one against Munster.
Yeah.
So I think he's still working out who that third guy is. Sean Cronin is going to start behind Rory Best, provided Rory Best is still fit. But who is that third number? And I think that's a little bit of a shootout now over the course of this tour. And you still have time in November to decide if, depending on what your circumstances are with injuries.
A little bit of this is, there was some, it wasn't really criticism, but it was a suggestion that you could rest a lot of players and bring a different group. But actually what he's doing here is giving these players, particularly at 10, the opportunity to find out what it's like to play with the first choice number 9 and the first choice 12 and 13 outside you. So it's not like Joey Carbery's going in with the second choice scrum half and the second choice first centre. Like, he actually understands now what it's like playing a big test properly.
And he hasn't had that opportunity. It's a big pressurised environment for him. Joe Schmidt has backed his initial conversation with Joey, saying you need to go and play more rugby, and he's giving him game time immediately off the bat.
Yeah, it's almost like they did a deal.
Of him making it
it's
a
reward.
Decision.
You've moved. Here's the slot. Go show us what you can do. I remember in the November internationals when Chris Farrell played against Fiji, and he had a really good game, and we knew he needed a little more cover in midfield because we had so many injuries in that area. And Joe Schmidt turned around then and picked him for the Argentina game the following week with the number one backline. And we were talking, I think, the three of us, about how important that was, that he got to play with Sexton, he got to play with Conor Murray, and then we saw the benefits of that in the first couple of rounds of the Six Nations, and Chris Farrell looked right at home. I think it would have been unfair to start Joey Carbery in an Irish team maybe for a second or third test, maybe where the series was done and there were a whole raft of changes. It would have defeated the purpose of trying to put the building blocks in place, where if Sexton is hurt in Japan, Carbery just slots right in. He's kind of rewarded him here. It's very good to see.
Yeah, it is good to see. And Joey has had big impacts in big games. Obviously, you'll think back to his first cap against the All Blacks in Soldier Field, came on, did extremely well. For the last 20 minutes, it was 20 plus minutes. Yeah. He was good. He was part of that creation of the Stockdale try that broke England just before half time in the Grand Slam game. So when you think to pivotal moments, he's been in the mix and he's been on the field too. And now comes a different sort of responsibility. Rather than plugging gaps, it's like, okay, can you shape the team performance around your game? And you're getting maybe not the full side, but you're getting a very strong side. Very different than the Fijian team that he played back in November. So, yeah, I think that comes with an extra responsibility and an onus and a focus on him.
And kicking as well, which, he's going to get if he gets an early penalty and he gets a little bit of a settler, that'll help his confidence. Would it detract from his performance if he's missing kicks and the test match is in the balance and he's thinking, God, I need to justify my selection here to Joe Schmidt, even if he is creating openings and showing us what he can do so well with the ball?
I think 10s always critique themselves on their goal kicking.
Do we know
in
what
some
kind
ways
of
you're
goal
able
kicker
to,
he is? Like, where does he?
Not
how do we
really.
rate him? Have we just not got a
big
big
enough
enough
sample
sample size?
Yeah, I don't know what his stats are off
What's
the
his
top
range?
of my head, but
Like, can he kick from the 10-metre line?
We had him in talking about kicking and how he changed his kicking style when he was coming back from his last injury, and the last injury was the wrist, was that it? And so he'd actually had a lot of time he couldn't do contact, but he could do kicking practice, and he figured that he'd improved his percentage, which would have been around the 70s, and obviously needed to be better than that. So,
but as well, if you think about it as well, Conor Murray is now pictures in the paper of him goal kicking, and he's such a confident player. He's knocked over some important penalties himself.
Yeah.
Again, the Soldier Field and
from distance too.
And the Grand Slam game, when Johnny's tightened up too, or when he hasn't been on the park. So I think Joey first and foremost has to think about his ability to control the game, his own personal performance, and then look at that goal kicking, take it in isolation. If it goes well, terrific. If it doesn't, treat it as separately. Yeah, that can be worked on.
It's that game management though. Like when you think back to when O'Gara was coming through, he always had that ability to ping the ball into the corners, even as like a 21, 22-year-old. That was kind of the first thing that you associated with him, and maybe that was just because that was the style of play. We haven't seen that yet because no team that Carbery has played on really has asked him to do that. Apart from the one
glimpses of
against
it,
the Italian team.
There was he had one great kick in Soldier Field where he popped one in over the back. He had a brilliant kick when he started that game at fly half against Montpellier in the Champions Cup last season at the RDS. Like, you're right, very few opportunities for him to do it because A, he's not playing enough minutes, and B, when he does, as you say, they don't tend to play that way. But I've seen glimpses of that end over end rolling kick that only lands maybe 2-3 metres over the head of the defender, but then just gets away from him and heads towards the corner. Like, it's definitely in his locker.
Players play to their strengths too. Like, Raj knew that was a big component. It was in his armoury, and that was something that he could call on. And if in doubt, bang, nudge in the corner, and you get some serious pats in the back, and particularly from your pack. You get applause from the crowd because it's momentum and it generates a surge. But your pack will absolutely thank you for putting you into the right positions. Whereas it's not ultimately Joey's game. He wants to play with ball in hand. That's his attitude. It's just a matter of refining the parts where it's not on and realising, right, now's my opportunity, and being able to enact the skill well.
Yeah. Maybe a bit more responsibility from Conor Murray in this game when you have somebody who's less experienced than you to decide, okay, well, I'm going to dictate when we kick, and when I'm passing it to you, I'm kind of expecting you to do something with it.
Well, nothing really changes there because Conor Murray takes a lot of the pressure off Johnny Sexton anyway.
Okay.
He where other scrum halves in the past will pass the buck and go, all right, you do the exiting for us.
Yeah.
He takes it himself, and because the angle of his kicks are so precise that in many cases, even though he might only be 6 or 7 metres from the touchline, he'll get the ball further up the touchline than passing it back at a better angle to the 10, and then him launching a 40-50 metre kick. He's quite unique. His accuracy of box kicking is one of his great strengths and is a big pressure reliever for Ireland.
Is there any difference in how we play with this 10 than we would if Sexton was playing? Like, just in terms of the game plan, obviously it might be better executed because we were talking about somebody who's absolutely world class at the peak of his powers. But is there a change in style? Is there something different?
No, I think there is for the centres because there's a good chance Joey Carbery is going to go a little bit more himself. I don't know if he doesn't have, to my knowledge, I haven't seen him at training, but to my knowledge, I don't think he's capable yet of picking passes like Sexton is. I don't think he sees it quite as well. He's getting there.
That bullet lateral pass.
Yeah,
just
but just that really late, reading the defence, seeing what happens, and then picking the third of three options.
The
at the very last second. Or those small little nuanced delays where waiting for someone to bite and then throwing the pass. I just think that's experience with Sexton. He's been around a long time. But I think Joey has a great passing game. But so how I see it in midfield being different is that he's going to go. You got to run lines off him.
You're playing with Rog at 10 when you're winning the Grand Slam, and you're playing with Felipe at 10 when you're looking to win the Heineken Cup before he gets the knee injury, obviously. So how different is it for you in the span of 2 weeks between, say, the Welsh game and the Quins game, and he's at 10? Like, how different is it for the midfield pair when you've got such a different fly half, one that can step, beat the first defender? What changes?
I think you've got to be on your toes when you've got a 10 that wants to be aggressive with the ball. With Felipe, you knew that kicking wasn't his strength, so again, he's a bit like a Joey, where he wanted to play with ball in hand, and he wanted to express himself, and he backed his own capabilities, his own skill set to beat individuals and get offloads away. So your lines of running off that, vary, and you have to always be ready for him to go. It's a bit less predictable. With someone like Rog, he was capable of a break, but it definitely wasn't his strong point, because he wasn't particularly strong in contact. So you knew that he wasn't going to be getting super offloads away if he did get hit in the tackle. He wasn't particularly fast or didn't have brilliant feet. But the other parts of his game, where he was a really nice passer of the ball, he ran a good back line, so you held a little bit more depth, and maybe you weren't you didn't necessarily have to be as ready to run a line off one of his breaks, because they were few and far between.
Yeah. Does it keep the rush defence a bit more honest? Because you can, like you say, it's a little less predictable. If Sexton is there, the chances are the pass is going to find its way into midfield. Whereas if Carbery's there, it's a little less likely, and so the Australian midfield can't necessarily rush up on top of our midfield pair, Bundy Aki and Robbie Henshaw, because the ball may not be there. And then you've broken the channel, and there's a gap then for Joey to step into.
Yeah, I think Beale and Karevi looking at Carbery will realise they've got to get into the passing channel, because he is possibly more likely, because of his footwork, to get half breaks. Johnny's clever, but he doesn't have anything like Joey's footwork. So Joey, that footwork can get him out of trouble, and it can create something when it looks as though he's running down running into a black hole, but all of a sudden he's got that back three footwork that can get him out. Someone thinks they've double teamed him, and all of a sudden the ball comes, one arm comes free, and if you can run a good line off that is, that's game changing stuff. So that's where Beale and Karevi will have to flood those passing channels. As soon as Joey takes the ball to the line, they've got to slam it shut and not let Henshaw and Aki get through there.
I was looking at the Sydney Morning Herald, I think, where they've done one of those ridiculous things where they give each player marks out of 10, total of the two teams, and we now know who's going to win. Ireland are going to win because we got 116 and they got 113. But the difference between the two teams, like even in the minds of the Australians, is that, we're better, Ireland are better. But like their backline is sensational, and Israel Folau, dickhead and all as he is like one of the best players in the world at the moment, right?
Yeah, he is. Athletically, I don't know if there's anyone better. Going to the area, and we talk about Rob Kearney's aerial threat. There's no one in world rugby that's capable of getting to the heights that Israel Folau can. If the accuracy of those cross-field kicks are good enough, he's simply going to get up above you. He gets to kind of Devon Toner type heights in line out, using the leverage of the his opposition winger or full back, proper Aussie rules style of knees into the back and then a kick to exert himself, and another kind of foot and a half. So it's pretty impressive to watch, and he's playing with a lot of confidence. Even with all that the contentiousness between him and Pocock and what's going on in camp and everywhere, all great friends and all that. I'd love to see it. Love to be a fly on the wall and see if that's all true. because they're of such polar opposites in opinion.
People do get over that stuff, though, right?
I think they're professional enough to be able to. I think they don't have to be. You talk about sitting beside people at dinner. I don't know if either will be in a rush to fill the free spot beside one another. They'll just stay away, and celebration of tries will
be interesting.
Always.
I just got to go over and get a message from the coach.
Yeah, I just get to stretch my calf here while the whole team celebrates with Israel.
Yeah,
or maybe not.
Yeah, that will be interesting, or maybe it's the Pocock.
But as well, you've got great distributors. You've got Bernard Foley, one of the best passing tens around. You've got Beale, that's capable of opening teams up. You've got the hard running of Carbery. So I really like the look of their back line.
Like, just to talk about Curly Beale for a minute, in and out of the team over the years, and clearly
more in it,
but gifted, like a stratospherically gifted
talented
player. And had a clash of personality with a couple of coaches along the way. But Čekić has shown the ability to get the best out of mercurial talents, sometimes by kicking them in the hole, and sometimes by actually just giving them the opportunity to play. And you have him now in the team, not with the responsibility for being 10. It's okay, well, this could be a bit of a revelation for them.
I think it's his best position. Where he doesn't have to control things, where they can get that second receiver. They can also get Folau in. When they get to midfield, they can have Folau on the right, Foley on the left, and you can have Beale picking and choosing which side as well as a second distributor, running little arcs off either of those two ball players. Having three playmakers, particularly, Folau is more of a strike runner than a playmaker, but he's so good at getting the offloads away when he does make his half breaks. But having Foley and Beale, two incredibly capable playmakers like that, is a real luxury for them, and it spells danger for Ireland if they get narrow, and that has been our Achilles heel, getting narrow. And Australia have always been a clever team, even in their worst years. They're always a smart team. They've always got good footballers, with Quade Cooper at 10, or you could mention a multitude of different players. Matt Tamua at 12 over the years. So they've always been a clever team to be able to find where the space is, and this back line is going to be no different. And whether they can get the quality of ball with that pack will remain to be seen.
Is Will Genny still Will Genny? Is he still as good as he always was?
He's playing well this year. It's been a good season. He's had a few injuries recently, but for the Rebels, he's been good. I think he vanished a small bit when he went to Stade Francais. Pension is looking decent, but
that could happen.
but again, he's come back and he's got an appetite back again, and he is playing well. So, is he the 23, 24-year-old Will Genny? I'm not sure, but he definitely has the capability of making players defending the ruck look silly still.
Is it a risk for Schmidt to pick the team he's picked?
Yeah, of course, because it's not full strength, and when you don't pick your number 110, there's a risk that comes with that. I'm interested to see what happens in that front row. Historically, in probably in the last 10 years, Australia haven't been brilliant at front row. So whether they feel that there's an opportunity to test guys without getting them, opened up.
Yeah. I see that as a sign that they don't really rate the Australian scrum.
I think there's something in that.
Plus, look at the finishing team, potentially.
Yep.
So if this 15 can hold their own, and the Australians are starting to get a little bit ragged, and they realise they've maybe thrown their best shot at Ireland and they haven't managed to bury them, and then you see an entire new front row, a Grand Slam winning front row, Sexton coming on to direct things behind the scrum, Conan coming into the pack, Larmour out in the wing. If a couple of those Australian backs are starting to tire a little, if it's a risk, it's a calculated one.
Yeah, it is. Listen, it is a calculated risk. I agree. I think he's backing himself with what he said. He's put his money where his mouth is with Carbery, but other, is there a risk in John Ryan? Could he have put Ty Furlong, who's played a lot of rugby? Again, another one. I don't think he's lost a game this season either. Yeah, is he 25 from 25?
5 or 6 of them hadn't lost a game.
Yeah, but these guys have a lot of miles on the clock as well, so you got to look after them too, even though they'll want to play. So, to know that he's coming on with 30 minutes to go. It's a nice place for the likes of John Ryan to be knowing that he can absolutely empty that tank for 50 minutes
and give all of himself.
And give absolutely. It's you're not getting more than an hour.
Yeah,
he's not playing more than an hour. So to go hard for that, and again, well, as we said, Rob Herring is a tester. Is he the third choice hooker? Because that's still, there's question marks around that, as much as there's question marks around who the second and third scrum halves are going to be.
He dropped Cronin completely from the squad in November. Was that a sign that actually you're not nailed on at number 2, or was that more I need to give access to the squad and the team?
I think the former. I think he wasn't sure about some of his performances. I think James Tracy had been playing well and had been starting for Leinster at times. So I think he excluded him because he didn't feel that he warranted the game time that maybe others were worthy of. And as a result of big performances for Leinster, making himself number 1 comfortably again, and being involved in 3 trophy winning teams,
that gets you back in.
It's a good place to be. The best way to get yourself back into international contention is to do well with your provincial side. As a collective, you will. If you start thinking individually, I've got to go well.
Yeah.
The best way to do it is if you go and win a trophy, there's a very, very good chance of you getting back into international reckoning.
Yeah, which is why Herring making it this far is pretty impressive, given the terrible season Ulster had.
On Cheika, Brian, I mean, you know him very well, as you've already said. It doesn't take an awful lot to make him angry. And I wonder, when he sees this 15, is he angry? Does he take it as a personal slight that Joe Schmidt doesn't rate my scrum? He's able to leave one of the best 10s in the world out of the team. Is he thinking, like, these lads think they're just going to rock up here and win this game?
Well, he said in the paper, he says Ireland think, reading the press, Ireland think they're going to win the series 3-0. So I think there's something in the scrum. I think he'll definitely have a word with Kepu, the new hooker, and Scott Seo, that there's a sense that there's a softness, or maybe there's a ticklish underbelly to them, and whether they're up for the fight. And he'll be encouraging them to put that Ireland front row to the sword, because they're number 1. That's their number 1 front row, and the number 1 front row you're not going to see because of Rory Best's absence, but the 2 props will be coming off the bench. So I think that there'll be definitely a focus for them during the week, that they'll want to show that their scrum is very, very capable. And then you look at the other place that games are won, and you got to look at their back row, and we haven't really mentioned Pocock or Hooper, but still class operators, and the speed of Hooper, and the ability on the ground, and then the unrivaled ability of Pocock on the ground to steal ball. The accuracy of Ireland at ruck time will have to be phenomenal, and they'll have been playing with guys in bibs for the week, playing Pocock and Michael Hooper, targeting them all week, because you know that you got to try and make them be the tackler. That's ultimately what you do. You make them be the tackler. That means it's unlikely that they're going to be able to pinch the ball
and run at them.
Yeah, exactly. You see them first arriving to the ruck, you're in trouble. Okay. Whereas they make the tackle because of the new laws of having to swing yourself around, release, and come back through the gate. It makes it nigh on impossible for the tackler to be a ball jackler as well, or a poacher.
The trouble is there's 2 of them, right? They're still one of the few teams ever who've decided to play 2 similar players in this position, and it really works for them, which is weird given how copycat sport is, that more teams don't do this. Yeah,
listen, we've seen Wales try it with Tipuric and Warburton with mixed success.
Yeah.
But it's gone well for them. They've held on to them, gone right back to the World Cup. Obviously, Pocock's been injured quite a lot, and been over in Japan too. So he hasn't had the game time in the goal jersey that you might have anticipated. But Michael Hooper, has been made their captain, and he's a big player for them. I don't know much about your man Timu, whether I'm guessing he's a big ball carrier to complement the other 2 lads. But those 2 are, there are 2 of them, so both of them aren't going to be making tackles. They're not going to be making double teams. They're going to do what, maybe a little bit of what Lydiot and Warburton used to do, where Lydiot used to do the chop and Warburton used to poach ball. And they had it down to a T.
The other thing I wanted to ask about Checo is, what's his style of play? Like, how do you define, or does he just look at the talent that he has and decide, you guys are really good, we're going to play to our strengths? Like, is he prescriptive?
Australia are never that prescriptive. I think they'll use big ball carriers to give themselves advantage line, because the game, you still need to get over an advantage line. You still need to be confrontational and aggressive to for your pack or for anyone coming around the corner to soften a team up. If you start going wide, you'll be forced into kicking the ball because you end up not going anywhere, and it's not a momentum builder. So you still have to get over the advantage line. But I think he does leave a huge amount of it up to his playmakers to be able to make good decisions. They're a heads-up rugby sort of side, always have been, and definitely with that personnel of Genia, Foley and Beale, and the striking ability of Hale Petty and Falau, and their offloading ability. And
was Checker like that with you guys?
I think that's a slightly different team than the one that he had in 09 with us. I think we were also a team in our infancy back then, even though he had us for 3 years. We wanted to play with an attractive style, but I don't think you can specify as to his one style. I think
that's what I'm wondering. He's adaptable.
I think he's adaptable.
Yeah.
I think he is,
and that's why he's successful.
So I wouldn't ultimately say that Michael Check has a style. He wants to play. I would say that about him. He's not someone that wants to play 10-man rugby, and he discourages kicking the ball too often. I think he definitely wants to be seen as a coach that has an ambition to showcase and entertain, but not be silly at the same time.
Yeah.
The Australian team needs to play, though, doesn't it? Like they struggle to capture the imagination at the best of times down there. They can't be a stick it up your jumper type team. They have to be able to throw the ball around. It's the reputation of the Wallabies is built on that Grand Slam team of the 1980s, and people still think that's how Australia should play, even if that's true or not, given the players they have right now.
But it's not in their nature, though, either.
Yeah.
Even yes, they need to entertain because rugby union is in a bad spot down there, and they're struggling with numbers, and they've obviously lost the Western Force, cutting costs. But that aside, I don't think that you look at that team. There's lots of ball players there, and lots of people that want to play attractive heads-up rugby, and I think that's why I always like watching Australia. I think they're a great side to watch. Even when they're poor, they're decent to watch.
Yeah. Did you get the sense that rugby was a dying sport down there? We had Matt Williams on during the week talking about that, and was just saying...
Only from what you hear, rather than, I haven't been down there for a few years, but you definitely... It sounds as though they're fighting a losing battle in that they're fourth choice sport. I think soccer's really taking off there too.
The second Ireland test is on during a World Cup game where the Socceroos are playing Denmark, I think, which would have been Ireland, obviously, but on at the same time. So it'll be interesting to see if anybody watches the rugby when the team is competing in the World Cup.
They say that there's stadia are going to be packed out, but that's partly because there's so many paddies down there, and we love to support our team, and they'll be flying over from New Zealand and flying down from Singapore. So I think that possibly maybe says as much about us as it does about them.
The last thing was Peter O'Mahony's captain for this game, but Johnny Sexton isn't starting, so that leaves that whole kind of maybe Pete gets rested in the next game, or is Peter O'Mahony now the Ireland captain, do you think?
I don't know. I think it's if Johnny had started, it would have been quite a statement that he would have been the captain if that was the case. And it's the guy in possession. We talk about Rory Best has to sit it out till November. Yeah. And if you win a series down there, and Peter does well, and we know about his leadership capabilities, and he speaks well. He's very well respected. Again, I suppose what's not on Rory's side is it's another 15 months to the World Cup, and he's not getting any younger. So I don't think it's a fait accompli that Rory's going to be Ireland captain, depending on what happens on this tour and maybe in November too.
You can really see them saying, look, you just concentrate on getting fit and don't worry about all that extra ancillary stuff, and you need the extra hour of recovery time instead of going to sit with the media, and it's fair enough.
That said, Rory's got a phenomenal record as captain. He's a popular guy. He says all the right things. might split opinion. I'm doing all the right things. What happened during the Six Nations, but there's no doubt that you look at what he's achieved since he's taken over the captaincy from Paul O'Connell. It's exceptional. Winning against every nation that he's come across. So he won't want to give it up, because Ireland have such a great opportunity in next year's World Cup. But I think there's still a fair bit to play out in that regard.
Yeah. All right. Are they going to win this game?
I think I'm not sure. I think it's. I like the look of that Australian team. It's just a matter, are they very rusty, and how well are Ireland equipped with Joey there? Will it take a little bit of time to get in there? Also, Australia love playing in Brisbane. They love playing in Suncorp or Lang Park. They've got a great record there. So I wonder. I just fancy maybe Australia might sneak this one.
All right. Is the jet lag as much of a pain in the hole as everybody says?
Oh, terrible. Going that way. Terrible.
So,
absolutely.
You don't have much time really to settle in.
Yeah,
No,
when do you
don't.
recover? Do you recover next week? Is that part of the issue here as well?
It takes 6-7 days to fully get back to
still
sleeping
struggling with it, so.
till 7 o'clock. Till sleeping till 7 in the morning. It'll take 6-7 days.
Yeah. All right. So Australia to squeak this one, and us to probably pick one up.
Yeah, we'll
week
definitely win a test. It's just I think it'll be 2-1 one way or the other. I don't think it's going to be 3-0 either way.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be 2-1, and I think it's too hard to call at the moment. This one's tight again, of course, but I just wonder, will Australia just sneak this one?
All right, Brian, great stuff. Thanks very much.
Okay.